quite a different reaction from some quarters of academia. They even lobbied the FCC to try to ban sponsors.
Well, that was interesting. There was a couple things that happened during the filming of that program. One is, the film, it featured some of the material from the book Forbidden Archeology, including the case, the California gold mine discoveries that I was mentioning earlier on the show here. Those 50 million year old human artifacts, that were found in these California gold mines.
Yeah.
So when the producer, a man named Bill Cote, was filming the show, I told him, well, you should go to the Museum of Anthropology at the University of California at Berkeley, because I knew that some of the 50 million year old artifacts from the California gold mines are still in the collection of that museum, although they're not shown to the public.
Right.
So when he went there, the museum officials gave him all kinds of excuses. Well, they said, well, you're making a television program. You probably have a very tight deadline, and we just wouldn't have time to have our staff look through all of our collections to find these artifacts for you so that you could film them. So he said, no, I've got 6 months to do the program. Could you please have a look? And then they told him, well, we got another problem. We would have to pay our staff overtime because this isn't part of their normal work. And we don't have a very big budget, and we just can't afford to do it. So the television producer said, no, we'll pay all the expenses. We'll pay all the overtime salaries, whatever it takes. And finally, they just said, no, we're not going to let you see them. So that was interesting. So that was one kind of obstruction. And then when Darwinist scientists at the University of California and other universities throughout the United States learned that NBC was going to be showing this television program, they tried to lobby NBC not to show it. They said, this is going to just ruin everything we're trying to do in the education system, they said. To have children turning on television and going, seeing a program on a major American television network that contradicts what they're being told in school, that they just couldn't understand how that could possibly be happening. They thought they had the government under their control, the television companies completely under their control. So then they tried to stop NBC from showing the program. They didn't succeed, and actually it was quite a popular program. But these scientists became even more angry when they learned that NBC was going to show the program a second time. So again, they began writing letters to the chairman of the General Electric company that owns NBC, trying to get him to order NBC not to show the program again. But NBC did show the program again, telling people, watch the program, the scientists don't want you to see. So I thought that was a pretty courageous thing for them to do. But that got these scientists even more angry. So then that's when they went to the FCC, to the Federal Communications Commission, which licenses the television and radio broadcasting stations.
Sure.
And they tried to get the FCC to investigate NBC, to censure NBC, to fine NBC millions of dollars so they would never do anything like this again. Now, I'm happy to say that the FCC didn't go along with that. But it's just so interesting to me that these kinds of attempts were being made by these scientists, the same ones who would tell you, well, it was wrong, for the church to suppress Galileo, hundreds of years ago. And then when it's their turn, they're doing the exact same thing.
Yes. They're becoming like a religion. Now, you had...
a bad one.
Yes, a bad... the religion...
Because I think there's such a thing as a good religion.
Yeah, there is. I mean, but generally, a religion is just the guide to get you to the spiritual level. Now, Charlton Heston, NRA President Charlton Heston was the narrator of the program. You had Moses. So, how did that come about, or did you have anything to do with that?
Well, I think that had to do with the producer, Bill Cote, who had known him from a previous television program that they'd worked on together about the mysteries of the Sphinx. But I think it's interesting. Maybe some of your listeners and yourself will remember that Charlton Heston didn't just star in the movie about the Ten Commandments as Moses. He was also the astronaut Taylor in the movie Planet of the Apes.
Yes.
Where there was something very interesting that went on in that. If you recall that story, the astronauts, including Charlton Heston playing the role of Taylor, land on this. They crash on this unknown planet somewhere, and they find there's a whole civilization there, run by the apes. But the humans, they don't speak. They have a very low level of culture. So it's like, on that planet, the roles are reversed. It's the apes that are in charge. It's the humans who are in the zoos and who are the laboratory animals and are kept as pets and who live like wild animals in the forest. So it was very interesting. But among the apes, there was an archaeologist named Cornelius who went out to the Forbidden Zone on this planet, an area called the Forbidden Zone. He did an excavation in a cave there, and he found evidence that humans had existed with advanced civilization before the apes. So this just challenged the whole ape civilization because they thought they were the superior beings,
Yeah.
So Charlton Heston, in the role of Taylor, the astronaut, and the ape archaeologist Cornelius, they go out, to that excavation, and they find evidence. They find this doll, for example, that the humans had left, and Charlton Heston finds all kinds of other things too that showed that the scientists that were running this ape civilization were completely wrong in what they were saying about the history of the humans. So I think it's the same situation in the world today, and I think in that, I think it's very interesting that Charlton Heston, in this television role, The Mysterious Origins of Man, he was almost playing the same role that he did in that movie, Planet of the Apes. So I don't know if all your listeners are so interested in all this details about Hollywood films and things, but I think that Planet of the Apes was a really interesting one with the Forbidden Zone and the forbidden archaeological evidence that challenged the ideas of all the ape scientists about what they thought the real history was. So I think it's kind of interesting that he more or less played the same role in that television special, Mysterious Origins of Man.
So he played the same role in the sense that his character, in other words, he was basically
calling attention to archaeological evidence that contradicted it. He introduced myself and my co-author, Richard Thompson, on the film. He said there's a new generation of researchers who are finding evidence for extreme human antiquity that just contradicts everything we're now being told by scientists. It was almost like the Planet of the Apes.
Right, and he's quoted as saying, "We've seen a broad range of evidence, some of it highly speculative, but there are enough well-documented cases to call for a closer look at the conventional explanation of man's origins." Right.
So that's more or less the same thing that was going on in that other film role that he played. So maybe he felt some attraction to that television special because of some previous experience that he had in the film industry.
That is interesting. I wonder what the fundamentalist followers that support him politically and all that stuff think about his open-mindedness.
Well, I think probably when we look at any person, sometimes we can get a superficial impression of who they are, and when we look a little deeper, we can find they're more complex
Absolutely.
than it might appear at first sight. So, of course, people can change down through history. I mean, people can change. People can become better. They can become worse. So, I don't know if I can pass judgment on them, but I thought it was a courageous thing for him to do, to be the host of this television program, which caused such big shockwaves in the scientific world.
Well, it just tells me that he's a true actor, as long as you get paid, you could probably get